Welcome back to Cultural Geography. Remember, we are doing right now the cultural metaphor of sub-Saharan African bush taxis, so please make sure you have that handout notes as we get going. Roman number 3, the hierarchy in African society, otherwise known as seating arrangements. In a world without seatbelts and dangerous driving, an outsider might not think the front seat as the best place to be. Yet to an African, that is not true. The front seat is the seat of honor. It's reserved for elders or reserved for visitors. A visitor is a guest to a country and will be treated as such. Besides, visitors to Africa are probably wealthier than most Africans and are taken care of. Yet the visitor is expected to reciprocate the kindness. Power does not necessarily equate to material wealth. Age is also respected. It is common in a bush taxi for a passenger to be demoted to a less desirable seat when a more important passenger gets on. An example has an American visiting his daughter, a Peace Corps volunteer, when the bush taxi he was riding breaks down. A young boy passed by on his bicycle. The driver commandeered the boy's bike to ride into town to search for a mechanic. The boy was clearly upset but could do nothing about it, for he was expected to obey the instructions of any adult or elder. Promotion is often based on seniority, not ability. Teachers are held to be infallible sources of knowledge, and students do not appreciate teachers who profess ignorance or uncertainty. Managers are expected to direct and to command. Formality is important. Leaders are expected to act, dress, and behave in a manner befitting their position. This can give rise to a big man syndrome with a preference for powerful autocratic rule. There's a great deal of politeness which is expected in daily interactions. For example, endless ritual greetings. One is expected to learn the endless ritual greetings and to use them frequently. The how are you, and your family, and your health, and your sleep, and your wife, and so on and so forth. To a Westerner, accustomed to a passing nod to acquaintances, this endless repetition may seem amusing and childish, but for Africans, this is an important ritual. In fact, it is a great offense not to participate in these ritual greetings. To pass a colleague without a greeting can cause offense and lead the offended party to wonder what he did to receive such rude treatment. It is also important to use a person's title. When going to see the doctor, an African will not call him by his name, but call him by his title, doctor. The culture is a moderately masculinity culture. Men are given more opportunities than women in society, and although the status of women is not as high in the U.S. or Europe, it is better off than in most Asian countries. Africans are generally not threatened by uncertainty, although they seek to achieve harmony rather than conflict in the face of uncertainty. So let's answer 5 questions. Do you think sub-Saharan Africans are process or goal-oriented? Correct answer is process. Do you think they are expressively emotional or not so much? Correct answer is expressively emotional. Do you think that they are individualistic or collectivistic? Correct answer is collectivistic. Do you think they have a high or low power ranking? Remember, high power means that they have respect for authority. Low power ranking is they think everyone is equal. Correct answer is high. Yeah, high power ranking. Do you think that they are past-oriented or future-oriented? Correct answer is past-oriented. All right, let's take a pause from the video here, and let's get into this, the most favoriteest part of all your lessons, I know, is the mapping parts of the test. Remember, there will not be any countries and capitals on this upcoming test. We haven't been doing countries and capitals since this coronavirus thing all started, but you still need to know the important land features and the sub-regions of Africa. So don't worry about all the numbers on this list, but do be concerned about the letters and the Roman numerals as we get talking about these. So first of all, letter A is the island nation of Comoros. Comoros, located right here. Letter B is the island nation of Seychelles. Letter C is the island nation of Mauritius. So A, B, C, Comoros, Seychelles, Mauritius. Letter D is a region of the Sudan called Darfur. Darfur region. Letter E is the Nile River. Now, the Nile River also goes into Egypt, but we're not talking about that right now. So basically, if you follow the Nile River from Egypt, the capital, down to the capital, Sudan, and then continue a little further down, either into this area over here or this area, it breaks off into two parts. That is your Nile River. So anywhere around here will be a good identification. Letter F is the Rift Valley. The Rift Valley, remember we briefly talked about it when we were talking about the Dead Sea last chapter, but it's in greater detail in this area. So basically you follow it from Lake Victoria, whoops, I gave away G, Lake Victoria, all the way up to this river, follow it to this country's capital, follow it to this country's capital, and anywhere in this area is the Rift Valley. More details about it later. As we've already said, letter G is Lake Victoria, and letter H, down here at the very southern tip of Africa, is the Cape of Good Hope. All right, next we have the sub-regions of Africa. These are identified by Roman numerals, not regular numbers, not by letters. So, the southern Africa is identified by, it's symbolized here, but it's shown in this area. It includes the countries of South Africa, Lesotho, and Swaziland. Southwest Plateau countries are identified right here. They include the countries of Botswana, Namibia, and Angola. Then we have Roman numeral 3 located right here. This includes the 4 countries of Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Then we have the Indian Ocean Islands. We've already named 3 of these countries, but the Indian Ocean Islands include Madagascar, Comoros, Seychelles, and Mauritius. The Lakes region countries are the countries all by Lake Victoria. They include Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. The Horn of Africa is Roman numeral 6. This includes the countries of Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and Somalia. And then lastly, we have Roman numeral 7, which includes the countries of Sudan and South Sudan. So that is all of the land features and the subregions that you need to know for the upcoming test. All right, let's get back into our notes. This is cultural geography. In case you forgot what class you were in, this is chapter 19, Southern and Eastern Africa. If y'all could open up your books to page 459. 459, there's a map that I want you to refer to as we get started into this chapter. First of all, some overview of Africa. This chapter will cover Southern and Eastern Africa, the areas that you see on the map on page 459, plus what we just talked about in class. Next chapter will cover Central and Western Africa, and if we have time, the last chapter in Africa will cover Northern Africa. First of all, Africa is the second largest continent. It's smaller than the continent of Asia, larger than all the rest. Only 13% of the Earth's population lives in Africa, however. Its location near the equator makes Africa's climate warm with little fluctuation. It is smaller than 80% of Africa is located between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. There is very little temperature change throughout the year. The amount of rainfall decreases the further you get from the equator. This is a general rule for Africa. It's not absolute, but it's general. The amount of rainfall decreases the further you get from the equator. So the further north or the further south you get, the less rainfall there is. There are jungles and mountains near the equator, and near the northern and southern parts of the continent, there are deserts. The vegetation consists of rainforests, savannas, and deserts. The Sahara Desert created a barrier between North Africa and the rest of Africa. Although one continent, these two regions are very different places. While Europe and Islam has affected North Africa to a great extent, sub-Saharan Africa has consisted more of the experience of tribal groups. Sub-Saharan Africa encompasses all of the land south of the Sahara Desert. Farmers deal with the problems of famines and poor soil. Rainfall is sporadic in Africa. When it does rain, it tends to pour. The soil is also pretty bad in most places. It has had a history of dealing with European imperialism and government instability. From the 1800s, Europe scrambled to establish colonies in Africa. By the end of World War II, these empires began falling apart. These new countries were forced to deal with the difficulties of government instability as groups fought between democracy and communism. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, communism declined in Africa. Islam is a greater influence the further north you go. Again, that is not a universal statement, but it is a general truth. The further north you go in Africa, the greater the influence of Islam. Islam began in Saudi Arabia and quickly spread across North Africa. With few exceptions, the further north a person goes, the more influence Islam has over a country. The further south one goes, the country is influenced by some form of Christianity or African tribal religion. Today, fighting breaks out because of tribal conflict or religion. Countries that were created by Europeans may have included two African tribes that were always enemies. Genocide has erupted in places in Africa as one tribe seeks to wipe out completely another. Religious wars among Muslims, Christians, or local religions have started civil wars in some countries. Africa continues to be a poor continent because of the fighting that takes place time after time, preventing any strong economies from being established. Turn your books, please, to page 460. I want you to read the pink box entitled Ethnic Diversities in South Africa. Once you have finished that pink box, that's all we're going to cover for today. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be good, do good.